After our country was hit by multiple terror attacks this weekend, a stabbing spree in Minnesota Mall, and multiple bombings in New York and New Jersey, the threat of terrorism is once again front and center. Wisconsin Senator and Chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, Ron Johnson, is here. Thanks so much for coming by, Senator.
Well, Vlad.
So, what are your thoughts on these attacks that we've just gone through in the last couple of days over the weekend, and the stabbings and all the things that we've seen so far?
It's depressing. I mean, the threat isn't going away. It's real. It's growing. The threat of Islamic terror is evolving. It's metastasizing. CIA Director John Brennan testified before the Senate Intelligence Committee about a month or two ago, said that all of our efforts have not reduced ISIS's terror capability, their global reach. They remain a formidable, resilient, and largely cohesive enemy. And President Obama, 2 years ago, laid out our goal, America's goal toward ISIS, and it was defeat ISIS. That's 2 years ago. Syria, 2 years ago, about 200,000 Syrians have been slaughtered in that civil war. We're approaching 500,000. So, we need to show American leadership. We have to assemble that committed coalition of the willing of the civilized world to first defeat ISIS, deny them that territory, destroy that caliphate so they'll stop inspiring these types of barbaric terrorist attacks here on our own homeland. And then we've got to remain relentlessly committed to destroying Islamic terror wherever it resides on the planet.
Politics aside, give us a sense of what we are doing to protect the homeland.
Listen, we have hardened our defenses. Probably the simplest and cheapest thing we've done is we hardened the cockpit door. So we haven't seen an airplane being used as a directed weapon like it has in the past. But understand the freedoms we're giving up. We spent about $95 billion on TSA since 9/11. I'm old enough to remember being able to walk into an airport terminal, walk down the terminal, hop on an airplane. We're kind of like, frogs in a boiling pot of water. We just really aren't understanding all the freedoms Islamic terror is taking away from us. So, from my standpoint, I think the greatest destabilizing force on the planet today is Islamic terror. I'm sorry, President Obama won't even name it. I just came from the speech. This is the second time I've been appointed by President Obama to be the U.S. representative to the UN General Assembly. Last time in September 2012 or 14, he spent a lot of time talking about how moderate Islam has got to utterly reject and renounce this perversion of their religion. Barely even mentioned it this time.
Well, he did talk. Well, I just want to play a little bit of what President Obama said today about building walls, what Donald Trump calls building a wall to protect us from immigrants coming into the United States from our southern borders. And now Mr. Trump is calling for profiling, which a lot of experts have said does not work. But I want to play a little bit of what President Obama said about the refugee situation specifically.
Today, a nation ringed by walls would only imprison itself. And together, now, we have to open our hearts and do more to help refugees who are desperate for a home. Ultimately, our world will be more secure if we are prepared to help those in need and the nations who are carrying the largest burden with respect to accommodating these refugees.
Should we be allowing people who have been displaced by war, by famine, people who have been displaced by acts of terror, who are looking for refuge, should we allow them into our country?
We should take no risks on whoever we let in this country. And we can actually do that by setting criteria, for example, in Syria. If you establish that we're going to bring in women and children and relatives of Syrian American citizens that have financial wherewithal to support them, and then if there's any questions whatsoever, we don't let them in. I'm the sponsor of the SAFE Act in the Senate, which would require the Secretary of Homeland Security and the FBI Director and the Director of the National Center for Counterterrorism to actually certify that they represent no risk. So we can do that. But talking about refugees, we're trying to deal with the symptom of the problem when we're not addressing the root cause. And it really is. We have got to defeat ISIS. That's what's causing all the refugees. The Russians bombing Aleppo with the Syrian government basically backed by the Russians. Right. So we have to actually recognize what's causing the refugee problem. Let's address the root cause so we reduce the number of refugees seeking refuge.
But Senator, I was reading an interesting article by Jack Schafer in Politico this weekend, and he referenced a book by Brian Burrows in which FBI statistics point to an 18-month period between 1971 and 1972 where the volume of domestic bombings in this country, 2,500 in that period alone. Aren't we much safer today than we were even 10 years ago? Because, yes, these bombings are important, and the one in New York City certainly could have been a lot worse. Only 29 people were injured, but it could have been a much there could have been a massacre. But I'm just curious, are we not much safer than we are today? And by saying that we should profile people or not letting people into this country because of their religion, isn't that sort of playing into the fear that the radicalists and our enemies say is indicative of our culture?
First of all, I've said neither of those two things you just said. I don't feel safer.
You don't feel safer?
I don't feel safer, no. We were talking earlier how you used to be able to walk down terminal. I remember as a young man looking at all these exotic places in the world, just waiting to go visit them. Now you got to check the State Department to see if it's safe to travel to so many different countries. So, no, it's with the internet, with global travel, with the globalization, the internationalization of the world. This is spreading and it's very difficult to control. It's an enormous challenge. What do you do with the not guilty yet?
Right.
I'm not saying any of this is easy, but again, I am identifying what I think is the root cause. I agree with President Obama from 2 years ago. We have to call on moderate Islam to renounce and reject this perversion of the religion. We need to positively engage with Muslim communities in America. We need full, as great integration into our society, assimilation. We'll do a far better job in America than what they do in Europe, for example. So there's so many things we have to do. We have to combat this on the internet. But it does start with destroying that caliphate. And again, that was a goal that President Obama laid out 2 years ago. It took us 4 years to defeat Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. Right. We've been at this 2 years, and CIA Director John Brennan said our efforts have not reduced our terror capabilities or the global reach.
So you didn't say that, but let me ask you if you agree with the Republican nominee. Should we profile people coming into this country?
We need to completely vet them and not take any risks. But there's no reason to take risks with people coming in, and America's legal immigration system should be based on the principle what's in the best interest of America and American workers. And we have to secure our border. We have to secure our border. I'm far more concerned about ISIS operatives coming in through our porous southern border, and we've held 18 hearings of this in my committee, than I am certainly of any kind of refugee program, but there's no reason to take risks.
So do you support then building a wall on our southern border, the way that Donald Trump has talked about?
We certainly need far better walls in areas where we have it. We probably need more of them, but we can utilize technology. We need to eliminate the incentives for illegal immigration. I've called for a robust guest worker program. If you do that, have a legal system, you're going to reduce the number of people we have to keep an eye on, and it becomes far easier securing the border. So it's a complex problem. I've explored this. We can go into this. I could spend a lot of time talking about this, about our insatiable demand for drugs giving rise to drug cartels. It's a very complex problem. So I don't think we need a 17-mile fence, if that's what you're asking.
That is what I'm asking. And finally,
but we need better fencing.
And he has also called for banning people who are Muslims from coming into this country because of what some people say, you just said today, you don't feel as safe. Do you think that's an answer?
I don't agree with that. For example, we have Iraqi interpreters who now their families are being slaughtered by ISIS because we don't have enough visas to bring them in. That's immoral. So obviously I would never put a blanket ban on anybody based on religion or ethnicity or anything else like that. But again, we should completely vet, and we should take no risks. There's no reason for us to take risks.
Do you feel that Secretary Clinton, if she were elected president of the United States, would not be able to put into place some of those things that you're asking for?
Well, I'm afraid she'd have more open borders and let a whole lot more people in without proper vetting.
All right. Thank you so much for stopping by, Senator. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
As always. Senator Johnson, thanks.